We are coming up on the half an hour here on Open Line. Thank you for joining us. We are talking about women in agriculture. As always, you are invited to call in with your experiences, your questions. We've got the folks here to answer those tonight, and we are off to a great start. We have Rachel Painter and Rebekah Norman both joining us. Ladies, thank you very much with the UT Extension. We just had Ann on, some great answers for her, but you wanted to mention one more thing.
Yes, uthort.com. So that is where we have all of our publications that pertain specifically to horticulture. And again, those cultivar recommendations that Rebekah mentioned can be found there, and our garden calendar. So it goes through each month, and it has your task for the month on a specific date for your area. So Middle Tennessee is color-coded a certain color, West Tennessee. So it really tells you what to do when, because that's part of the hardest thing to figure out.
So. Well, it can be really intimidating even if you just go buy the little starter plants at your hardware store or wherever, and you're like, now, like, even when to plant,
what now?
And now what? Like, how do I get the most out of it? Because you are investing some money and some hope in that plant.
Yes, and time. It takes a lot of time to grow that tomato.
If you have success, it can really spark something a lot bigger.
Yes. Exactly.
And I think more than anything right now, we all need help feeding our families with the way prices are going, which is something I wanted to talk to you about. We know farm work, agriculture work in general is hard work. Inflation right now is making it even harder. I was just talking to the lady I buy vegetables and fruits from during the summer at her farm stand, and she said, Carrie, you have got to tell people our fertilizer prices are through the roof. Gas prices are killing us. They need to support their local farmers. Well, here we are. So I'm gonna let you guys give the pitch. What are these farmers facing, female or male? It's hard.
All of our farmers, just like other industries as well, are definitely facing those rising input costs. So it is frustrating, I know, when you go to the grocery store and you see those rising costs of feeding your family. But also remember, so are our farmers out here facing those rising costs as well. So like you mentioned, what you can do: purchase locally, support our Tennessee farmers. By doing so, more of your dollar will go back to our Tennessee economy. So that is your #1 step. Find your local farmer and learn about what they're doing. What practices are they using? How are they producing this? And get to know them. I think that is one of the biggest things we can do, is support our local farmers and learn what practices they're using. Find someone that you can form that long-term relationship with, their family, your family. If you can find an ag-tourism destination where you can purchase those, fruits, produce, and even meat from, then that's a great opportunity. Or a local farmers market, and find all of those people in the same location. So purchase local and keep more of that dollar here in Tennessee.
It is a big deal. And Rebekah, you mentioned you actually go out to farms and help farmers to say, this is the best practice, this is not. Tell me more about that.
Well, so there's nothing like being out and walking ground with somebody. When I was a new extension agent, I'll never forget the moment. I was working in the Rutherford County office. An individual came in, and I think they had questions about their pasture. So I kind of listened, asked questions, and then I made a diagnosis, you might say, and some recommendations. And I could tell by his face he didn't feel really confident about how he was going to do it. And I looked at him, I said, would it be helpful if I just go out to your farm and we walk over this together? And he said, oh, really? You'll do this? I was like, yeah. And he said, well, how much will it cost me? I said, not a dime, not a dime. And I will never forget the relief on his face. And so that's what drives, I think, all extension agents while we do that. And sometimes you just need to walk with somebody and see their farm. I also learned that I always ask people why we do certain things, because they've usually got a pretty good reason. And it's interesting hearing the story, and there might be maybe a more effective way for them, but there's always a good reason. And so I want to hear that first. Don't you, Rachel, when you go?
That's very wise. I mean, instead of just saying you need to change this.
Exactly. They may not need to. I need to understand their situation.
Their particular operation. Do you have more farmers calling in saying, I've got to get smarter about this, or I've got to find a new way? Or we're not going to make it.
Yes. Every day you hear, stories of the family farm, having to be sold. But I think, again, they are learning to diversify or even get more of a niche market for themselves. So, you know, most of our farms are still family farms, and that's what I mean about connecting with your local farmer. You know, get to know them and their family, and what their operation looks like if possible. Not all of our farms are ones that, you know, are going to welcome you on just for safety or liability reasons, but if you can learn more about how your food is produced, where it comes from, then you're also more willing to pay that extra cost or pay, you know, for whatever practice you believe in. So I think that's, you know, one of our biggest things is get to know your farmer.
I was at the state fair a couple of years ago, and I was doing the cow milking competition.
Yes.
I hate to brag on myself, but I am a champion. I just want to let you all know. 2 years in a row. So, but we were also doing a story on the dairy farmers, and I do remember the stress of it was a husband and wife, and they just said, you know, we may not make it past this year. This has got, you know, with people buying less milk than ever before and finding alternatives. They said, this has gotten so hard. We don't know that we're going to survive. And that is such a reality for so many farmers in Tennessee, like right here at home.
And here and nationwide. I mean, farming is a notoriously narrow margin business, very narrow margins. And then when you add all the things in farming that no person can control, rainfall, temperatures, all those sorts of things, it's very hard. And it's challenging for anybody, and so that's why diversification can really help. I've had producers who are in the cattle business, and typically, you know, there are several stages of production in cattle business. We won't go into all that, but they sell calves when they're 7 weights or 8 weights, so that's 700, 800 pounds. And then they have learned that they're going to add value to their animals, they're feeding them to finish now on farm, because they are eliminating some of the middle layers of the industry to try to capture more income, and there's risk involved in that too, but most of them have been really pleased with the results. So it's just like you said, I've got to think about this differently, and maybe expand my focus. It might be sometimes I need to narrow my focus and just go in deeper. It's unique really to every operation.
I want to talk more about that in a second, but let's get to Ron here on the line. Hi Ron, thank you for calling in tonight.
Yes, ma'am. Thank y'all for taking my call.
You bet.
I just kind of tuned in there and was listening to the agriculture thing. I'm fixing to be 52 years old. I don't know how many people remembers. I do, as far as my grandmother cooking or killing chickens, and I remember when I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, plucking feathers off a scalding hot chicken. If anybody remembers that, I'd love to hear it.
You know what? I remember my mom talking about that, actually having to do that when she was little. Yeah, it's her mom do it. I was like, I don't need to hear more of this story, but it's a reality. You know what? It's the reality. It's how it gets to our dinner plate. Let's talk a little bit about agri-tourism. It's really become a, you know, a hot word, a hot trend, not just in the last year or two, but for quite a while now, because farmers have had to say, how am I going to make this survive? And it's bringing people in. It's really interesting. What have you seen, Rebekah?
Well, I've seen more of that, and I think it's great for the public. It's fun. I've got 2 little granddaughters that love to go to a particular farm in Rutherford County. They've got season passes where they take the kids all the time, and they've got access to farms, but because it's so fun, because it's educational. But I think also it's good for the consuming public to go and learn about agriculture, because some of the things that we do in agriculture might seem foreign to them, or maybe even at times it might seem unkind, but it's only because they don't understand or haven't had experience with that particular species of animal, don't know their normal behaviors. And so it's great to get to interact and learn that. I mean, communication's always great, isn't it? And to communicate 2 ways. And then, you know, I've taught a few classes regarding that, and some folks have, you know, changed their minds in regard to certain agricultural practices once they understand why some of the things are done.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So yes, agritourism is definitely growing, and like you mentioned, it's because that is an opportunity for them to capture more income,
Yes.
but also to share their story.
Yes.
So in agriculture especially, we're seeing a huge push of, like Rebekah said, educating the consumer by sharing that story. And typically, honestly, it is the female that takes on that role, especially through social media. If you look on social media, you can see, all kinds of different farms with accounts these days trying to educate the consumer. And again, it's because if we're not sharing that story ourselves, someone else is going to write that narrative.
Yes.
So it's very important that we help our farmers share their story, and part of that is agritourism, welcoming them onto the farm, showing them these practices, why we're doing those practices, and some of that is simply through educational signs.
Yes.
Some of that is through classes. Some of that is through, a hay wagon that takes them along, and they just get to see the pretty cows, and that's fun. And again, how do we teach, especially the next generation, through fun? If we can make it fun and exciting, like the kids wanting to go, they have access to a farm, but it's fun to go. So then they are, connecting more with agriculture.
Right.
And I think that's very important, as many of our, younger generations don't grow up on the family farm, especially taking them to these agritourism destinations, learning alongside them, making sure that they understand where their food comes from. And again, that's not just for the kids, that's for the adults. But when you know where your food comes from and how it's produced and why it's produced that way, again, you understand all the cost of those inputs and that production process, and then you understand why you're paying that on the shelf.
Right. I just did a story not too long ago out at Byers Dowdy Elementary in Lebanon.
Yes.
And the teacher there for the 3rd grade class,
Dalton Teal.
has hooked up with Vine Branch Fellowship, which is a nonprofit.
Yes.
And they are planting a school garden. And now they're expanding to another school in Wilson County. And to see these 3rd graders, they knew
everything.
everything. Parts of plants that I literally have never heard of.
Yes.
They knew when to plant kohlrabi and when it will come up and what it tastes like, and all of these different things. And I think, when we got farther away from the farm just as a society, we lost that knowledge. We just, a lot of people thought, I have heard kids say, well, tomatoes come from the store. And it's like, no, they're in the store. That's not where they come from.
Yes.
But programs like this are starting to come back into our schools, which is such a great thing.
Yes. Well, and for Dalton especially, he grew up in an agriculture family, and then he is able to take that passion and use his platform as a teacher to share. So if we could all do that, if we could all use our platform and our circles to share that story, to educate, especially the next generation, how that food is produced, where it comes from, and involve them in that process, then they learn alongside us. So yes, that's amazing. Teach them in the schools, especially with their school gardens. But even take it further, take them to learn at a ag tourism destination. Go to a farm, get to know your local farmer. And again, I promise you, after that child grows their own tomato, they're going to appreciate it more.
It might taste a little better, too.
Yes, exactly. More willing to try the okra.
You're exactly right.
And don't we all learn best by doing something?
Yes.
The 4-H motto is learn by doing, and it is the truth.
It is.
Adults, I learn better that way.
Me too.
And if there's a woman who wants to get in farming, or anybody, but one of the best things they might do is just find their local farmer, get to know them, and ask them, hey, can I come work for you one day?
Yes.
We had a new specialist in our office who was unfamiliar with vegetable production, and so she would go and she would just work for a farmer all day. She would come in exhausted. I remember she set strawberry plants all day long. She said, when I asked him if I could help him, he took it seriously. But man, she knew that business now. And so I think most farmers, so many, are willing to do that. And let's face it, we always could use an extra hand too.
Right. And we have done stories with farmers who say, I have no one to pass my business off to.
That's
and
very
it's
true.
heartbreaking
Yes.
for them, whether it's just
Yes.
because they don't have kids of their own or their kids have decided they don't want to be on the farm. And, you know, for some, it's just not, it's hard work and it's not a
is.
desirable industry because
And
of the
it's
hard
not a
work.
guaranteed income.
Well,
I mean,
you're
you
right
think
about
of it, that level of labor, that level of investment, and then that you know you don't have a given salary every year.
No.
And so there's significant risk involved as well.
Yeah, there's a reason why we have the feast or famine. You know,
Exactly.
it really can be that.
And reason
Yes.
why there are programs in a farm bill as well, because it's really in great way a matter of national food security.
Yes.
Yeah, what bank would loan any money to a farmer when it may not rain this year?
Right, right.
And so that's why there are programs like that in place, really, so that we'll have a national food supply. We won't be hungry.
Yeah, because it all starts right
It
here at
does.
home. We depend
It
on these
does, right
farmers
here in
so
Tennessee.
much. It really does.
Yes.
All right, we're going to take another commercial break. Remember, probably our next segment's the last segment to call in. So if you have a burning question, want to share something, now's the time to do it. 615-737+. Stay with us.